Now we're going to have Keith Westrich come up from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and kind of talk about all the great stuff going on through the department around college and career readiness. So I will introduce him. Keith Westrich currently is the Director of College and Career Readiness for the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's Center for Vocational, Workforce, and College Readiness Programs. Through the Office of College and Career Readiness, Mr. Westrich manages and oversees department initiatives designed to prepare students for success after high school. Previously, he led the department's Connecting Activities initiative, providing resources and technical assistance to the 16 local workforce investment boards and local school-to-career partnerships, supporting the development and implementation of the state's work-based learning agenda for districts and schools participating in school-to-career programs across the Commonwealth. Prior to his work at the department, Keith served as the director of the Boston Private Industry Council's nationally recognized Pro-Tech program, which laid the foundation for the integration of school and work-based learning designed to give students the academic, workplace readiness, and personal social skills necessary to compete in higher education and high-performance workplaces. So we're so happy to have you, Keith.
I didn't realize I did all that. This is great. I just want to say how excited we are at the department to be working with Boston University, the Readiness Center, and Mass Inc. to support this work over the next 3 years. We had an opportunity last night to spend some time with the researchers from across the country, and they're really an impressive bunch, and I know that districts who are participating have found that out in meeting with them today, so we're really pleased to be here. And before I get started, I really do want to recognize the members of the Office of College and Career Readiness at the department. As you can imagine, there's like 550 of us. It really is the mission of the entire department to prepare all students for future success. There is an office within the department that sort of becomes the conscience for how we mobilize that and leverage other centers and other units in our work together. So before I get started, and all I'm going to do is provide you a landscape for sort of the vision, building off of what Gerald was saying this morning, of what we are thinking about in relationship to college and career readiness, the priority projects that we've been working on for a number of years. And so with that, I'm going to introduce the team. And if you wouldn't mind standing up, because we're here to support the researchers, we're here to support districts over this 3-year period, we're here to support our partners in all of this. So Anna O'Connor, who's the newest member of our team, is the Early College Pathways Coordinator, doing a terrific job in that venue. We have Lisa Harney, who is the Dropout Prevention and Recovery Specialist in the unit. We have Shayla Stewart, who is our Connecting Activities Coordinator, which manages all the career development education for the unit. And then Niall, who's squatting, is, for what reason I'm not sure. A little anxious there now. He's our College and Career Readiness Specialist. Jenny Curtin, which many of you know as well from the unit, is not with us today or tomorrow, but she is someone who is integral to our body of work. So with that said, I just want to give you sort of a sensibility around what our vision is, what's transpired in the last few years, what's different, what we're actually as a unit focusing in on, and we'll just begin with sort of setting the stage around this. We talked about this a little bit this morning about branding and messaging and marketing. What are we trying to do here? We spent a lot of time with this rhetorical college and career readiness moniker in terms of where people found themselves. We did a lot of student focus groups. We did a lot of work through the Mass Business Alliance for Education. And a lot of times, some students don't find themselves in that college and career readiness proposition because for a lot of parents, for a lot of students, college, for whatever reason, signals a 4-year degree. And so a lot of folks in that branding can't find themselves there. And so we talk about college and career readiness as preparing all students for success after high school. Jackney, are you still in the room? There she is. And the way we've sort of branded this is helping all students become future ready. We have a terrific website, futurereadyma.org, with an incredible amount of tools and resources for influential adults, from mentors, community-based organizations, all across the board. So I would encourage you to visit that website, because we are trying to help all students find themselves in this proposition of what does it really mean to be prepared for your future. And so with that, the department sort of has identified really 4 big overarching strategies that support preparing all students for success after high school. It's about strengthening curriculum assessment and instruction, improving educator effectiveness, turning around our lowest performing districts and schools, and using data and technology to support our students' performance. Certainly something we've talked about a lot this morning, particularly with the panel. And so I've been at the department since 1998, and things have shifted in terms of policy and how we think about a broader narrative in terms of what it means to prepare young people for a 21st century economy. I mean, every one of us is in the room because we really care deeply that every student, no matter where they come from, deserve a world-class education. But the deliberate and explicit sort of recognition that academic proficiency is no longer enough to guarantee that success, and to actually sort of bounce off of a lot of the comments that Gerald made this morning, for many of us, it was a ticket to ride. But kids have to have a lot more skills in a lot more areas. And so students also need, as you all know and have been working on for a number of years on the local level, that they need knowledge and skills and experiences to navigate the workplace and ultimately be contributing members of society. So the policy context we operate in that's a little bit different in terms of my tenure at the department, and I think Gerald began to talk about this a little bit when he convened the integration of college and career readiness task force work. He actually articulated the 6 high-level recommendations. There's 21 recommendations that are literally embedded in that. And if you don't have a copy of it, we can get you one. Just ask and we'll send it to you electronically. But it's really worth looking at because it has become sort of a blueprint for this broader collective narrative around what it means to educate young people for a 21st century economy. It was the impetus which really both the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Board of Higher Education used to adopt a broader definition for the first time in the state of Massachusetts, what we mean for preparing all students for success after high school. Gerald referenced the 5 demonstration sites that are looking at piloting what does it look like to bring to scale individual learning plans for middle and high schools, what it means to sponsor career development education activities more holistically for young people. And out of that work, and if you haven't seen a copy of this, it's really worth picking up. It's out on the table if you've missed it. Because of the task force recommendations, we, for the first time, have developed guidance around career development education as a guide and glossary. It's focused on awareness, exploration, and immersion activities, and we really can't drive it systemically until we define it. And so this becomes a way in which we collectively as a state can have a more standard approach to what we mean by those kinds of activities. Because of our work with MICCR, we also just published the Individual Learning Plan Guide, which is very helpful in terms of offering guidance to all of you around what we believe this is going to be about. One of the big lifts, and Gerald talked about this morning, is sort of what is the role of counseling and counselors in all of this through the comprehensive model for school counseling programs. And so there's a lot of work that has gone into since 2012, this report and the recommendations and the follow-up that ensued. This being the biggest. This is the definition that we're talking about in terms of where, for the first time in the history of Massachusetts, we really broaden that collective narrative around what does it mean for all students to be prepared for successful futures. And so we've defined it as college and career readiness means that all students have the knowledge, skills, and experiences in the academic, the workplace readiness, and personal social domains to successfully navigate to completion an economically viable career pathway in a 21st century economy. And that doesn't necessarily seem like a lot, but it's a huge lift that was done on a policy level most recently and voted on by both boards. And so what it does is signal and give districts and everyone in between permission to learn how to do this in terms of what it means to roll this out, and hence why you're here over the next 3 years. The commissioner always talks about his need to see proof points. Really excited about the research projects that are going to happen because of your work, because we don't have a lot of research around what impact individual learning plans may have on young people making more informed decision making. We don't have a lot of research on career development education activities and what impact they have on post-secondary enrollment and completion, what it means to actually acquire those skills. So this is really an exciting time for us working with all of you. Now, the beauty of what we put in place since 2012 in Massachusetts, culminating in that broader narrative and in that definition, is most recently the Council of Chief State School Officers issued their own task force report called Opportunities and Options, Making Career Preparation Work for Students. First time out of the education house that they're actually asking for states to look at in earnest, what does it mean to prepare all students in terms of ultimately career preparation, which is really a remarkable shift in a subtle and not so subtle way, and obviously the work that you're going to be a part of. That task force launched its report in 2014. There's 3 high-level recommendations with 11 state actions. They look to Massachusetts because of our work with the MICCR task force, and the report and recommendations that ensued because of Gerald's good work. So it's really an incredible time in history, as far as I'm concerned, to look at how we collectively can prepare young people for a world that they inherited, which at times looked nothing like the world that I inherited. And so I kind of joke about this with my team. It's not that I can't manipulate technologies, but I was born on the other side of the digital divide. I don't think that way. I don't act that way. When I'm at home, I want to read a book. I can do what I need to do for work, but it's really, the only thing I can be about this is prophetic, because I will never be that person. These people who date online, I have a hard enough time in person. Yeah, I'm still looking for a mate, so it hasn't been very successful in either domain. But, yeah. Maybe that was too much sharing. Is this being recorded? But the world is such a different place. And I say this in jest and I don't. I kind of don't want to live 50 years from now. I mean, what our young people have inherited and what they're going to have to navigate at a much shorter time and in a lot more depth is something that, I know they're going to rise to the occasion. But there's so much in this world that needs solving. And it's a generation who grew up so literate in terms of how to use technology. In fact, in the early days when I used to work in Boston, it was fascinating to me because there was a lot of people in my generation who were leaders in these companies and managers, and these 16-year-olds would come in and they would be fixing their IT problems, and these kids who can't show up or dress or come with their drawers hanging down, it's like, but get them near a computer and it's like, they're just brilliant, they're brilliant. But there's 3 high-level recommendations in the Council of Chief State School Officers Task Force report, and we've done a lot of this work. We've done it and redone it. So when they say enlist the employer community as a lead partner in defining career pathways and the skills needed, we pretty much know what that is. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Work-Based Learning Plan, another tool, resource that came out of our office, it really was about organizing employers and educators and community-based organizations and everyone in between to really identify what are those foundational skills that every young person and every adult needs to be proficient in order to navigate a high-performing workplace. And they're categorized under work ethic and professionalism, including teamwork, around oral and written communication skills, and professionalism. And people refer to them as soft skills. I don't like that term. I just use professional skills because soft skills, to me, just doesn't quite say what I want to say about those skills. And as the superintendent said this morning, we hire because of skills, but we fire because of behaviors. Most of our young people, in all of the work that I've done throughout my life, in putting them in internships, it's really, really, really so true. It's just amazing how many more skills these young people are going to need to be proficient in, besides just academics, to be able to navigate a world that's much more complex. And so there's a lot on this slide, but all I want to point out in Massachusetts, just to get a flavor for the landscape, is when we talk about enlisting the employer community as a lead partner, we've heard their voice in a lot of ways in Massachusetts for a very long time. You know, with career vocational technical education and their advisories, they're always talking about sort of what is the labor market in Massachusetts and what skills do young people need in order to navigate that successfully. Connecting activities, which Shayla oversees, is really impactful. It's a statewide mechanism. And over 4,000 employers sponsor career awareness, exploration, and immersion activities. So it's really kind of cool. And then, of course, we had the whole work of the advisory committee. There were high-level employer leaders and businesses, 33 members on that advisory team. So we have vetted this sort of to death. We know what the it is. I think what you're challenged with, what we're challenged with in the state, is how do you bring this stuff to scale, and how do you reorganize districts and schools around things that matter in terms of those three domains. And there's no answer for that. There's no blueprint. And many of you, as well as the state, we have some of the ingredients, but I have yet to find anybody who has the recipe for what that looks like system-wide. So we're on a journey together about all of this, and there is no easy answer around what it means to reorganize your districts and schools around that broader narrative. And I just applaud you for continuing to take up that challenge, because young people are going to be all the better because of it. And so the second recommendation, which is a high one, is set a higher bar for the quality of career preparation programs, enabling all secondary students to earn a meaningful post-secondary degree. I mean, we all know, and this has been over for a long time, that every student needs some form of post-secondary education and training after high school. You just don't have a shot. One body of work that we're really pleased with in Jobs for the Future, I don't know if you're aware of them, here in Massachusetts, own a lot of this real estate across the country, is this accelerated early college designs, particularly for young people who struggle the most. How can we get them credited with college-level coursework while they're in high school, and how do we move beyond that through industry sector preparation? So that's a body of work that's really emerging right now. And then finally, we have our articulation agreements with career vocational technical and education. So let me just drill down just a little bit deeper around the unit and the work and how we've organized ourselves. The commissioner, with Race to the Top, brought in a beautiful system called Delivery. It's a very comprehensive way of looking at organizational development. When you have all of these projects that we're all working on, we do great. Americans do great with activities. We are one busy-ass people. But many times, you wonder why. Are they the right activities? Are they activities that are really established for a particular purpose? But a lot of busy people. So what we have done, again, is this being recorded? We've established some metrics that we care deeply about in this space called college and career readiness, preparing all young people for success after high school. And we're very focused on it in a laser-like way. And these are sort of our metrics around how we are looking at preparing young people for a 21st century economy. We take very seriously and look at increasing the 5-year graduation rate. We also are looking at, obviously, increasing the 4-year graduation rate. Right now, this is like the 8th year in a row that we have made really good progress on that. 86.1% of our students graduate. That's because of a lot of the wonderful and good work that you do. And I'll talk about these things a little bit more specifically. Increasing the MassGrad completion rate, which is our recommended program of study aligned with higher education admissions. And even though it's recommended, we have a lot of districts, superintendent talked about that this morning, Worcester, where they're requiring that. And we're moving in the right direction in terms of preparing all young people to be more successful as they enter post-secondary education. A big one that is relatively new in our body of work in terms of scalability is career development education and increasing the number of students who are participating developmentally appropriately with awareness, exploration, and immersion activities. And then finally, the third sort of bucket of our metrics is around post-secondary outcomes and increasing the percent of young people who actually are enrolled in post-secondary education and increasing the number who persist. And so this sort of organizes for us what we're looking at to continually measure. And we have identified in our unit through Delivery priority projects that support these metrics. And I just want to go through them rather quickly. But in part because I know our researchers, obviously coming to Massachusetts need to sort of be schooled in the landscape of what some of these priority projects are. We do have, and many of you are here, or some of you are here as districts to look at this in terms of improving academic support for young people. We have a whole body of work that we've been a part of for the last, 15, 20 years that looks at grant making around helping young people who have yet to earn their competency determination graduate from high school. We've had terrific success with a lot of our allocation grantees as well as our competitive grantees, where we've combined work and learning experiences for young people who are most at risk. We have, competitive grants to partnerships between our one-stop career centers and also our community colleges. So what we were trying to be deliberate around is when you look at a population of at-risk young people, particularly as they're in the high school and older years, where are the most appropriate environments for them to acquire these skills? It's really tough to have a 25-year-old sitting in a high school classroom. And so, we're figuring out sort of these menu of grants that allow you as districts and your partners to make really strategic decisions around what is most appropriate developmentally for the young people that we're trying to help here. And so the other thing that many of you talked about and that you'll be organizing your work around is the early warning indicator system. And as you know, it's identified grades 1 to 12 that may need additional attention. And I just want to point out one thing that we sort of piloted, and it was fascinating to me when I read it. And the early warning indicator system simply flags students in 3 different risk levels, low, medium, and high, of not meeting academic goals in 4 different grade groupings. So we have early elementary, which takes up 1 to 3, late elementary 4 to 6, middle grades 7 to 9, and then high school. But what's really cool that I've been reading lately, we piloted, once we had the early warning indicator system in place, with folks, sort of what some of these outcomes are and the implications of this. So a student, for instance, who is not proficient or advanced on 3rd grade ELA MCAS is 11 times more likely not to be ready for middle school. For the 6th grade indicator, for a student who is not proficient or advanced in 6th grade ELA or mathematics is 6 times as likely not to be high school ready. And this one sort of blows me out of the water, that for the middle grades, the 9th grader who isn't passing all of their 9th grade courses are 16 times as likely not to graduate high school on time. And so these benchmark moments have huge implications. And so the early warning indicator system is simply a tool. It's not a tracking system. It's not a life sentence. It's just meant to help districts understand better and collect real-time data on where their population is and what kinds of interventions and supports can you design to support those populations that struggle the most. There's 5 reports in Edwin. They're really quite helpful to districts. We also created, if you haven't seen this and you want to pick one up, the early warning indicator guide that we just developed this year as well. So all of these things are key ingredients to support the readiness for all students to become prepared for success after high school. MassGrad is, like I said, our recommended program of study. It's aligned more with college admission standards in terms of what we're looking at for high schools to be able to help all of their young people become more prepared. MassGrad, many of you are very familiar with this. It was a $15 million grant from the federal government, US ED, around dropout prevention and recovery. We've made tremendous progress and has been part of our ability to make such substantial gains through your good work in terms of increasing graduation rates and decreasing dropout rates. And the results are kind of staggering when we all come together to focus in on that issue for our young people. And I know that some of our panelists, particularly Joe, referenced that this morning in terms of that body of work. The recommendations that Gerald referenced also in those 21 look at Mass Model for Comprehensive School Counseling, Early College Designs, and individual learning plans. And so there's a lot of movement in terms of, again, knowing what the ingredients are to help all young people to be successful, but trying to figure out what the right recipe is for every district and school, and what is it in terms of implications for scalability that we need to care deeply about. And then finally, our other priority project that are supporting those metrics that I laid out is our School to Career Connecting Activities work. It's a state line item, $2.75 million currently. Those funds flow through the 16 local workforce investment boards, working in partnership with our districts and our schools to provide career development, education, opportunities, and activities for young people, particularly on the high school level. There's about 200 high schools out of the 393 in Massachusetts that are part of that particular network. And you'll see some of the outcomes here from fiscal year 2014. It really is a cool mechanism and a statewide infrastructure to help reach out to the workforce development world and for the workforce development world to reach back to support this. Because part of the paradigm shift, which is so hard and so challenging, is, you know, we all realize that it takes a village. And traditional schools and traditional school buildings are not enough to be able to help these young people acquire the necessary skills. And so our community partners, our business partners, they're all incredibly integral to making sure that this happens. It's interesting that it takes a village, but so often we're missing so many of the villagers. But honestly, the paradigm shift in education dictates, particularly as we move on through the developmental educational continuum, that partners are around the table and that they're providing this. This is not about burdening districts with more responsibilities. This is about leveraging the partnerships that exist out of school time, summertime programming, in terms of using the employer community to help young people acquire these kinds of skills, particularly in the career readiness domain. So all of you, and I know many of you over the years, and I know what you've been up to, are really digging at this and have been for a long time. And so finally, I'll just end with this. Even though we, the Office of College and Career Readiness, have a set of priority projects, many of which you are engaged in, it really is about creating a greater coherence and alignment with bigger initiatives, because I don't know how superintendents and districts do it in terms of all of the priorities that are placed upon you, from the state to the local requirements to all of the things you do. But it is quite amazing when you, as educational leaders, are trying to put all of this together in the name of helping all young people become better prepared. So you deserve a lot of credit, and it is about alignment and coherence. And so often we talk about competing priorities, and in my mind, none of these priorities are competing. They're complementary. We might not have the resources of the time or the infrastructure to deliver on them for very good reason and sometimes not so good reason. But it's about repurposing. It's about re-envisioning. It's about some of the things you talked about in your report out. It's not about asking districts and schools to do additional things that they're not really supposed to be about to begin with. It's about people rethinking for our young people a different educational paradigm that brings in these partners who are required to help young people get some of the skills that they're going to need. What we do, and I'll just end with this, and some of you have probably been a part of it over the last couple of years, is we're very purposeful about bringing together in a coordinated way districts and schools around professional development. One of the powers that we do have as a state is the power to convene as well as grant making. And we care deeply that you're learning from one another like this project, and that's why we're so excited to be here and be a part of this, because this fits right into the way we think about how we can best help enable, empower you, taking you from where you're at and taking incremental steps. When Gerald talked about teaching them the basic skills, I remember I was on a plane reading that, and I too was struck. I had a scotch or two at 30,000 feet, so I was really struck by how inspirational this book was. But it's really worth picking up because we talk about the skills gap, right? And rightfully so. And we want all of our young people to be successful. But what both Murnane and Levy identified is this. This is what put me on my professional trajectory. This was the watershed moment that took me away from a traditional way of thinking about who we are in our educational paradigm and what it needs to shift. What they identified is, look, it's this simple. Education is making progress. No one's denying that. But education keeps making incremental progress in a world that keeps changing exponentially. That's the gap. And until we get our heads and hearts and partners around that, that's the gap we have to close. Because we can't keep changing incrementally while a world keeps changing exponentially. We can't. These young people are not going to survive. And so we have a series, too, of webinars that we sponsor on all of these topics that we partner with districts around in terms of promising practices. So we care deeply about this kind of an initiative. And I'm so happy that the districts that are here are pairing up with researchers to be able to help us figure out, in the commissioner's words, where are those proof points? What is it? Because we can't do everything. As he says, we can't boil the ocean. What is it that we need to be about in order to prepare young people better? And we can't be a mile wide and an inch deep. Again, these are all the ingredients. It's your job with us to try to find the recipe in a 21st century world. So with that, I leave you and thank you and appreciate all that you do on behalf of students.